Welcome this evening. Tonight's topic is avoiding blank page syndrome. And this is an expanded program by Trish Blackwelder, our DTM, and member of Showtime and president of Showtime. Actually, and it came from requests. So I will turn it over to Trish now.
For those of you who know me better than others, you probably know that by the time March renewals arrive, I've already made all my commitments for educational awards to my primary clubs. As Marilyn was mentioning, this session tonight resulted from the situation this last year, where my clubs needed a few additional educational awards. And I looked at my list and saw, okay, I could do that. I could help. So I went ahead and made commitments that ended up putting me in an awkward situation of having to do 21 speeches in 25 weeks in order to deliver the commitment. Now, I like to write speeches, but 21 and 25 was a big challenge. And this session tonight is an elaboration of what I mentioned during my speech. And we're going to talk a little bit more about my approach and how I work with it and how I'm going to use that same approach again this year to deliver my 2022-23 goals. Okay. All right. It starts with the Distinguished Club Program goals. We have to be aware of the educational goals in the Distinguished Club Program. And I have to admit that, in my opinion, the Distinguished Club Program is the most underrated, underutilized conversation starter in our organization. Everybody's aware of it. They all know it consists of 10 goals. But using it as a conversation starter or as a means of getting members to commit to completing educational awards, I don't hear it used often enough for that. When I joined Toastmasters, I joined to speak. I needed to do prepared speeches and impromptu speeches specifically in order to reach my personal development goals. I needed impromptu skills to survive those career impacting conversations during elevator rides and break room collisions, but I needed prepared speeches for honing the 8 critical skills of successful presentations that you can only learn by giving presentations regularly. Because of that, it was very easy for me to make a commitment to my clubs to always have at least 1 or 2 educational awards available towards the Distinguished Club Program. I don't often hear members say, oh yeah, I'm completing 2 educational awards this year, 1 for each of my clubs. And I think that that's where most members fall behind then on their personal development. Right now, I'm a member in 4 clubs. My speaking frequency runs at about speaking every 3rd to 4th meeting. When I was in 1 club, that meant I was speaking every month or every other month. Now that I'm in 4 clubs, that equates to roughly 2 speeches per month for me to have to get through. So I am in a regular habit of writing and preparing speeches to have them ready for this 2 speech a month pace. When the 21 and 25 came up, that approach was not going to work. I was not going to be able to get them all done in the short time frame that I had. But I did at least have all the goals on a list, and I knew what I was close enough to getting accomplished. All right, here's how I did it, down to the nitty gritty, Yep, even the copies of the pages of my actual tracker. First off, you have to discipline yourself to keep a tracker. Many people will say, oh, well, I just go into Basecamp and I see what's marked complete. No, that's not going to cut it. Or, oh, was it so much easier in the legacy program because I just grabbed the manual off my desk and I could look and see where I was on the manual. Even that doesn't work because you'd have to dig through all of the manuals in order to find out where you are on all of them and then figure out which ones you were closest to finishing. That's what I'm saying. You really need to discipline yourself to keep a tracker. I personally like the trackers that have been developed, not by me, but by Julie Dahl, who's a Toastmaster out of, not Australia, I think it's Europe, Great Britain, maybe. I'd have to look again. Anyway, she has these trackers that you see at the bottom of the slide here. And this is what I use to keep track. I can flip through a page really quick and see exactly where I am on every path that I have active. And yes, I have 9 active paths in my Basecamp right now. Am I working all 9 of them? No. But I do have some prioritized, and I have the additional paths for when I need to do a project again. So that allows me to work on 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 level 1s, or only 1, 2, or 3 level 4s, for example. So using a tracker has multiple benefits. On paper, it's nothing you have to log into. Mine sits right here in my binder. It's always within reach. I can easily open it up, flip right to the path that I want to reference, and find out where I am on that path. I use pencil on my trackers because plans change. So I never commit to anything in ink. I do everything in pencil so that I can move things around, change dates, flip-flop speeches between club agendas and so forth as need be. That happened just a couple of weeks ago. I looked, I had 2 speeches to give that week in different clubs. And I said, I don't want to give that speech in that club. I'll flip-flop them so that I can push one of them off in a couple of extra days and finish it up before I give it. So everything's always done in pencil until I actually do the project. When I deliver the speech, then I will put it in ink that it was delivered. I'll make note of who my evaluator was, and I will chase them for my evaluation, my written evaluation from them, if need be. Okay. If that project completes that level, I complete Basecamp Manager, complete it, submit it, and get Basecamp Manager approval on it right away. Make sure that they get it loaded into Club Central for the correct club, and verify it myself the next day on the daily educational report so that I know everything got processed exactly the way it was supposed to have. Yes, my favorite role in a club is Vice President of Education, and I'm horribly mean to all my own vice presidents of education, making sure that I know exactly when they're ready to go into Basecamp and approve it, because I don't submit it until I know they're going to go in and approve it. I move around between my clubs in Basecamp too often, and if you don't stay logged in under the club that you're submitting under, that award follows you to the next club and the next club and the next club, and you can't get it to go backwards many times. So that's a whole nother speech in and of itself. All right, right in front of you on these trackers then are the completion details on every single project. And it also, Julie is really good about saying on her trackers that it's a 5 to 7 minute speech or a 2 to 3 minute speech or whatever that's required to complete the project. So that was how I figured the crazy, out on the 21 and 25. It kind of jumped up off the page as I started putting check marks by the projects that I was doing. I'm going 1 speech, 2 speech, 3 speech. Oh my gosh, how many speeches have I committed to? So it's easy to see exactly what it's going to take in order to complete the project. So let me stop here and see if anybody has any questions about the trackers. I'm surprised I don't have the most common question.
How do we get it?
How
Yes,
do we
how-
get them?
how do
I'm
you
like
get it?
raising my hand. How do we get it?
Trying to unmute myself. Yes. How did you get the tracker?
That's an obvious one.
Yes, I have prepared the trackers in a single file format so that you get one tracker for every one of the paths that's available, all 11 paths. And if you simply send me an email to my personal email, tblackwelder@outlook.com, I will send a compressed file of all the trackers for all paths right back to you.
Trish, Jimmy's got his hand up.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hi, I keep a spreadsheet similar to the trackers. I have one column has all the project names. Another column has all the times.
Mhm.
Then I have a column for each path.
Mhm.
And in the cells, I put the date, but as a note, which uses the little red triangle in the corner, I put down the club I gave it at and who was the evaluator and what the title of the speech was.
And
I
Jimmy,
did something very similar, but I do it in a spreadsheet.
yep. And Jimmy, if that's what works for you, then that's what you need
Yeah.
to keep doing. I did not want to build something when I saw Julie's trackers. It had everything I needed on it. And so I just went with her trackers.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I was doing a spreadsheet all the way back with the paper manuals.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
So Trish, I also use the spreadsheet, but I do have one question. You mentioned 8 skills, critical skills that you, what do you mean by that? Are they speaking skills?
Yes.
So what do you consider the 8 skills? I don't remember hearing about that.
Okay. Go pull any pathways evaluation form
Oh,
and go to page 3, and you will see the 8 specific skills that it breaks down how to judge a 1 to a 5. Okay. And those are the 8 critical skills then for presentations.
okay. Thank you. Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, and just one quick comment because Trish, God love her, sent me these files a year or so ago. And I'm predominantly a do it on the computer person.
Mhm.
But the advantage that I have found to having these printed out and writing them, that I could, because I don't have multiple displays. I have one display.
Mhm.
And I don't like switching from tab to tab. So I can have the tracker open, making notes on it while I'm looking at whatever it is I needed to look at. And it has been a godsend. So
Yeah.
yes, wanted
Yeah.
to say yes.
Nope. The important thing is that I'm not trying to convince you to do exactly what I do. Consider this presentation more an inspiration of how to develop something that works well for you. All right. Up at the top of the page here, you'll see that what I have is on Julie's sheet, there's an icebreaker. It's a 4 to 6 minute speech. She has a column for speech title, and that's not exactly what I put here. I will put the club name and the date that I signed up to give that speech so that I know that I've already got that one on a schedule somewhere. And then the title will come when I get the title. I don't always put that in there, but I do try to put it in there. And then on the date, that's when I actually really gave it, okay, and who my evaluator was. Okay, so this column here is usually in pencil. This column here is usually in ink. Okay, here is the club that I've submitted this level 1 to. This is the one I've committed my level 1 to. This was last year, and this level 1 for engaging humor was going to go to Plus Toastmasters. So once I have committed to a club that I'm going to give them a particular educational award, I also put that, there as well, so that I know that I've committed that award to a club already. Okay, so those are the pieces of information that I think it's important to have. Again, it looks very neat here at the top of the page, up here on the top of the page, and you could do this in a spreadsheet so that it always looked really neat. This is my real life here at the bottom where I just scribble it all in pencils and inks. All right. All my active paths though are in one place, so I never have to go hunting for them. And I consider the trackers worksheets. I'm the only one who has to be able to interpret what's on them or be able to read it. So that's really great. I can write all kinds of notes anywhere. I can keep scribbling and moving things, you know, anywhere I need to move them. The important thing is that that can I read it and remember what I captured here. They definitely help me bring focus at a glance to where I stand on all my paths, whether I'm working sequentially or skipping around. And I will tell you that the 21 and 25 forced me to do a lot more skipping than I had ever done before. I was just grabbing paths from all different directions and finding projects that I could complete so that I could get another educational award completed. So again, in the long run, it helped me keep everything in focus that I was actually working on. And then the only thing that's bad about the trackers is it doesn't tell you what speech you're giving next. You have to go through every page to figure out what speech you've got coming up on the calendar next. So I had to solve for that one problem. Okay, and this is how I did that. I solved for it by using my speech template. And what I did was I had my goal. My goal was to do 21 speeches in 25 weeks. I looked at my calendar. I was already on my calendar to give a speech at work. I was on my calendar to do a presentation for a lunch and learn. I was on my calendar for a keynote in District 26, which left me 18 speeches to go then to make the 21. As I scheduled each of the 18 speeches, I created a speech template for it. And this was where I came up with what I consider one of my best tips ever. I gave the file name something that would force the speeches to be in the calendar sequence that I was going to give them. So let me just hold that thought for right now, because I'm going to show you something on the next slide that'll go into that a little bit deeper. And then as each speech was given, I also saved my evaluation form right there with the speech, because I knew I was going to come back and use these speeches again. I wanted to make them better. I knew they would not be perfect speeches out of the gate to get 21 and 25 done. So I knew I would want to come back and try to improve each one of them. So,
Trish, I see a hand up. Jimmy has a question, I think.
Yes, Jimmy.
Go ahead and unmute.
Maybe he forgot to take it down from before.
Oh, okay.
Possible. Okay, we can come back. I'm not leaving this topic just yet. I'm just going deeper into it. All right. I found that I needed to think of a standard file naming convention for each speech that I prepare. Now, I'm constantly working on speeches, okay? I get an idea, I'll throw it into a speech template, it goes out into my file of speeches under construction. But because I was doing the 21 and 25, I had to change one thing. I couldn't do the speeches first and then schedule them. I had to schedule them and then write the speeches. I had to get on the calendar as fast as I could with all my clubs. I actually had to join another club in order to get enough speaking opportunities to get the 21 done. So I had to schedule first and then come back and write them. So each time I scheduled one, I followed the same naming convention. You can see it on the left or you can see it here on the right. 2022 was the year that I was giving the speech. This one was for March 9th at a particular club. It was for dynamic leadership level 2. Communication style was the project. And then I would put enough of the title that I would remember which one of it, that I was working on. This one was 2022 for March 14th. Presentation mastery, level 1, the evaluation and feedback project B, not the first speaking project, but the second speaking project, and then the title. And then the last one here was 2022. This was March 23rd was when it was on the schedule. And it was Dynamic Leadership Level 2, my leadership style, and the title. So just at a glance, all I had to do was go into my folder on my computer, and they were listed sequentially, as you see here, from January through to February and then into March. And I could see at a glance what path it was, what level it was, and what project it was. And if I had a title for it, what the working title was then. Okay, so let me pause here for more questions. Jimmy, do you have a question, or did you forget to take your hand down? I'm going to assume Jimmy has stepped away. Oh,
Question.
there we go. Did I hear someone?
Yeah, me.
Okay.
Okay, so you get on the calendar first, then you fill out your tracker, and then you create the file.
I make a note in pencil on my tracker,
Mhm.
and then I go create the template. Now, the template is a file that I just have sitting in my speech construction folder. All I have to do is open it and do a save as really quick.
Okay, so the ones that you gave and then you wanted to do better at another club,
Mhm.
how do you?
Okay,
Ch-
let's look at this one right here in the middle. 2022, 126, this is Leadership Development Level 4, Leading Teams. And the title of the speech was Too Busy. Okay, longer than that, but that was enough. Here were the 4 evaluations I got back on that project. And I went and rewrote Too Busy to give it again later here on January 26th. And then I have it in another club where I did it. Whoop. There we go. So I could go in and look at my evaluations and say, oh yeah, I wanted to make that change. I needed to adjust that. I needed to find a better way to phrase that. And as I would open the original and do a save as, then I could go in using the evaluations and make highlights or comments or a fast note or whatever in the speech saying this is an area I wanted to work on, and how I wanted to incorporate the feedback to make it a better speech. So it became a working document until I refined it and made it the next time I wanted to give the speech. Does that make sense?
So the example that you use actually was the one I was looking at, because you saved it once as a doc and then the other one as a PDF.
I'm sorry, I insist on working with a mouse, and this computer isn't happy working with a mouse. There we go. Well, this was my first speech here. This was the speech I delivered. All right. Then I had an evaluation, another evaluation, another evaluation, and another evaluation. I'm not sure how I ended up with 4 evaluations that day, but apparently I did. And so I needed to save each one of those evaluations. Those evaluations are the forms that we use out of Basecamp for speech evaluations. So they're editable PDFs. So they save as PDF files. They don't save as docs. Docs are Word docs. This is a Microsoft Word doc. This is a editable PDF. This one is 2. That one is 2. That one is 2. That one is 2.
So after your third evaluation, I see, and then there's one.
Yeah, it just says Too Busy PDF. It doesn't
PDF.
say eval.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if that was your second speech and you saved it as a PDF to.
No, all my
okay.
speeches are saved as docs.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I know the speech template is probably raising some questions at this point. So let's dig in to really what the speech template is all about. Okay, this is the first page of my speech template as it sets, waiting to be put into use. It starts off with path project, speech title, time requested, and then a place for my introduction. And my standard closing line to my introduction is always, please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Trish Blackwelder. So that's already there. I don't have to type it every single time. I don't have to remember that that's the way I like to use it. It's always there waiting for me. I may not have a speech title. I may just be working on or using a working title, but I will know what path it is and what project it is. And I will know what the time requested is and whether or not I'm going to want to adjust the time, in this case, from 10 to 12 minutes to 5 to 7 minutes. Okay. So this is what I start with. The rest of it is how I make it work really well for me. Excuse me. My template is narrow margins, 12-point Times New Roman font, set at 1.5 line spacing between all lines. I have these predefined elements up at the front, followed by a large blank space, okay? Because those are the settings I need in order to deliver a speech that will take me 2 to 3 minutes per page to deliver. Whether I read it or memorize it, it will take me 2 to 3 minutes per page at those settings. Now, why is this important? We're talking about dealing with a blank page. Starting, how do I start my speech? I don't have to worry because I know if I'm at 3 pages, I've already exceeded 5 to 7 minutes. Something's going to have to go from the speech. So I can go back and I can cut and I can take stuff out. If it's stuff I really like, I can copy it into the blank space. I may decide to put it back in, but I can edit on the fly and refine so that I can knock out a rough speech, 5 to 7 minute speech, in about 30 to 45 minutes now. When you do 21 and 25, you really, I don't want to say it gets mechanical, but you get a rhythm going, okay? So I can go in, I can put some information in it. I can go to the first page where my speech starts and I just start having a conversation with myself. Some of them I've started with, it was Nancy Starr Cassidy who got me into this mess. You know, now that's not how I deliver it in the speech, but that's how I started on the page. Or I can say, this has been a bugaboo of mine for 3 decades now. I've got to find a way to fix this. There's got to be a way around this. I just start having a conversation with myself, and that starts getting thoughts down on paper. But it's this template format that helps me know where I am so that I don't waste time having to continue to, give the speech with a stopwatch and then go, oh man, I'm so over time. I already know I'm over time if I've exceeded 3 pages, right? What I use the white space for then is to do things like go back and capture speech objectives, especially if it's a new project I've never done before. I don't want to get off track with my speech because I'm having such a good time having a conversation with myself. I forget that there are objectives I'm supposed to be hitting the mark with on a speech project. All right. So I need to bring those things back in. And sometimes it's a good line. Sometimes it's a URL where I picked up some good research. Maybe it's a remark or a song that gave me inspiration and I want to put that down. So what the first page will end up looking like then is this by the time I get done. Okay, it will be something like this. This is just an example for when I was writing the 21, 25, 11 hike speech. I wrote down, I had to remember the focus was how I did 21 and 25. My first original title was Done and Never to Be Repeated. And then I knew I had 18 speeches. I wanted to remember that I had done 1 at work, 1 in lunch and learn, and 1 as a keynote. I pulled the purpose statements out of the evaluation form so that I would remember what the purpose of the speech was so that I wouldn't get off track and what my evaluator was going to be looking for. So again, I would hit the mark. that my evaluator would be looking for to help them give me a better evaluation. So standard stuff at the top, followed by a big white space. Go to page 2, hit the top of the page, and start having a conversation and see what develops on the page. And that's how each speech started. So let me pause here and see if there are any questions or comments.
I got one. I need to have it clarified. When you talk about large white blank space,
Mhm.
you're literally talking about your speech doesn't start taking shape until the second page.
Correct.
And the first page is just where this is my, shall we say, outline?
This
Or-
is, yeah, this is what I call the template. This is the core information that I need to work from.
Okay, all right. So this is just where you keep your notes and stuff. And the second page is where you actually start counting those 2 to 3 pages or whatever.
Correct.
Okay, good.
But the important thing is to identify your speech rate. Now, I know I've shared with the group the podcast project and how, you know, having to rehearse it and rehearse it and record it and rehearse it and record it and rehearse it and record it again over and over helped me develop my podcast voice, which is influencing my speech voice now at this point. But that pace is something you develop a comfort zone with. So for me, I know that my speaking pace, like what I'm doing right now, is 5 to 7 minutes covered in 2 to 3 pages. Okay. Depending on if I'm going to add vocal variety, if I'm going to speed up and slow down, depending on what the content is, it might be a little, you know, plus or minus, but as a rough start, 2 to 3 minutes per page is what I produce when I'm writing a speech on paper. Kathy.
Yes, I unmuted myself. A question. You say 2 to 3 pages is your speech time. Do you ever increase the time of your speech in case you go more than 3 pages, or are you strict enough with your speech that you say, okay, I've got to edit more? In other words, would you edit more to stay within that parameter, that 5 to 7 minute parameter, or would you just add time to your speech?
My initial goal is always to edit until I get within the speech allowance, you know, for the project. 5 to 7 is the typical, okay, speech allowance.
Okay.
But I will tell you that I've gotten married to some content that I don't want to give up. I just can't get myself to give up with it. And then you'll see me come in and say, I'm adjusting for 6 to 8, you know, just to give myself that little extra bit of time.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Trish. This is Robin.
Oh, hi, Robin.
Hi. I was wondering, are you doing completely new speeches for every one of these projects, or are you sometimes saying I've done one and I need to rework it somehow and maybe do it for a different club?
Yeah, that kind of goes in with what I was talking about with the file naming convention. If you look on my actual drive, you'll see that some of those speeches have been given multiple times, but they're never the same speech. Okay, even if you repeated a speech that you've memorized, it's never the same speech. You change your voice, you change the tone, you change the gestures. So I don't object to people repeating speeches. What you cannot do is give the same speech for all 5 of the projects in a level. Okay, just like you could never use the same speech for all 10 projects in a competent communicator. That was the one thing that World Headquarters had always said. You can't do one speech for all 10 projects in the competent communicator. But because I was doing this on such a crazy pace, I knew I would be giving some speeches over. The first time I gave them, I barely got through them. You know, I just really hadn't gotten it done to the level I wanted it to be done at. But I pushed through, gave the speech, got the evaluation so that I could get feedback, because I was struggling trying to figure out how else to improve it. I got the project done. Okay, in the spirit of the project, I did complete the project, but I did turn around and then use that speech again in another situation. And I took credit for the next time too, because it technically is a different speech. I have adjusted it, I've refined it, I maybe deliver it differently, I might use different gestures with it or a different voice. So it works for me.
Okay,
And as a VPE, I would absolutely concur and sign off on that with a member. You are fulfilling the spirit of each project when you do the project.
Trish, Cynthia's been waiting her.
Yes,
hands gone up.
I see her. She has now popped up on my screen. Okay. Yes, Cynthia.
To your point, I have done something similar in that I created a standard also, as you did, form upon which we've been went so far as to say read by the evaluator. So I'll copy and paste and drop in what the objectives are of the speech, such that when the evaluator is reading, here is Cynthia presenting and here are the objectives. And then that way the Toastmaster has their segment similar to what you have.
Mm-hmm.
In the development of my speech, Cynthia style, I have found that I tend to work a little backwards. When I find a topic that moves me or gives me passion or something I heard, I'm like, what do you mean we can't do? And so then I go off on what 3 points or 4 points do I want to make sure are covered? If I was a listener, what would be important? And what would be the call to action for the closing? And then from there, I kind of straighten out the spaghetti per se of, did I meet the points? Did I meet the project objective? And does the introduction really set the tone? And for me, the title is always last because it's based off the body and my call to action for it to have relevancy. So as a different style, I found that works. I have to spend more time practicing where I see you're writing it out more and I'm highlighting bullets more. So there's a combination there that I possibly could learn from in writing it out, but I don't take a good amount of time to write out, but I always make sure what is the value to the audience that I want to make sure is covered. Thank you.
Oh no, it's a good point. And as I stated up front, I am not presenting this to have you copy what I do. I'm presenting it as inspiration. It's just an idea. Take what you like, leave the rest. If you don't want any of it, don't take any of it. It's fine with me. I was just asked if I could elaborate a little deeper, on how I'd actually accomplished it. Now, to Cynthia's point, if you hit me up in the hallway at an event and ask me to go in and step in for a presenter and cover for them, I'm going in with bullets on a page. Okay, absolutely. What do what's the most important thing they need to walk away with? What's the call to action at the end? What are the, 3 or 4 main points I want to make sure that I cover? And I'm working from a one sheet, with just bullets on it. But when I'm going to do a speech, it's the words, it's using the language, that is what I get supercharged on. Can I come up with the right words for the right audience? Can I use words that aren't as common to make the message sound a little fresher, newer, different, than what somebody has heard before, which is why I write my speeches out word for word.
Also to the point, do you need, or is an appropriate prop or handout to support the material to have ample time to put that together for it to be of relevancy? That was the other thing, having the appropriate prop. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
I saw Connie's hand up as well.
Oh, Connie?
Can you share how you fit in time, like pauses and laughter? So if it's a humorous speech, what do you allot for?
That's part of what comes back when I've got it down to the 2 to 3 pages that I want. that I think I want, then I'll start reading through it myself and find out if I giggle, you know, or if I think that's funny or whatever. And I'll realize that I have to add some time there. I'll also hear where there are, you know, bumps in the delivery and highlight those really fast and go back and try to smooth them out, you know, a little bit. So that's part of the refining. You know, I may get all the refining done in time for me to deliver it much more polished. I may not get all that done. So that's another opportunity for me to come back and do substantial rewrites in some cases, you know, to try to make it really what I need it to, what I envision it becoming. Okay. The thing here is always leave yourself some white space in your template, because you need to have somewhere where you can cut and paste and move things around and remind yourself of what the purpose of the speech is, what the objectives are that you're supposed to hit. I spent time writing an entire speech and then went back and realized I didn't have the purpose statements, you know, on my blank spot, and went and looked at the purpose statements, and they weren't anything like the speech I had written.
Oh,
I had gone so far off on a tangent in the speech that I wasn't even delivering the purpose of the project. That's a problem, okay? Because you are supposed to try, do your best to meet the objectives of your project. So I had to either find a different project for that speech, or I had to rework it. I chose to rework it. Okay. I'm trying to get to change. All right. I thought you might get a kick out of this. This is what Bob calls mission control in my home. Okay. I took this picture during the lunch break, during my lunch break, which on the day that I was working on the original 21 to 25 to 11 hiked speech. So you see my work computer on the right-hand side. And then you see my personal computer over on the left-hand side and the two displays that I work from. And all my inspirational stuff surrounds me at all times. So I can look up and be inspired by any of the plethora of pictures and memories that I have on my wall. I have an ideas file that I can always go to. If I'm still not coming up with something I really like, I can go pull something out of the idea file. And I will roll back and forth between the two workstations during the day when I'm tired of working on the speech. I can't seem to make any more progress on it. And I go back over and I do some more work for a while. And then I get another idea and I roll back over and I make a note really quick on the paper. I roll back, finish my work, roll back, go back to the speech. This is what I do during the day. But this is, when you hear me refer to mission control, now you'll know what mission control is all about. My mission control doesn't look like this right now because my one computer is still in the shop, but I'm looking forward to getting it back to this. This was a very comfortable environment for me. Now, the last step in this approach is that you have to block out quiet time and start writing. There's just no way around it. And by scheduling the speeches first, I forced myself to have to find a regular time to sit down in mission control and start writing. So for me, this came on Saturday and Sunday mornings on most weekends, because I end up with about 3 to 4 hours to myself. The cats refuse to recognize the weekend from the work week. So I still have to get up at the same time I get up during the week to feed them. And Bob sleeps in. So I know he's sleeping until probably 9:30, 10 o'clock. And that gives me that whole 3-hour window there that I can start hammering away on a speech. And when Star Trek is in season, in active season, streaming shows, I start my day with the Star Trek episode, because that always inspires me. There's always ethics, morals. usually a fight scene of some kind or a war scene of some kind. There's hard conversations that have to occur, and that just gets my brain going, and I enjoy that. So that's one of my big inspirations, and another reason why this gets called mission control in my house.
And humor.
And humor. Yes, there is. All right. And yes, that is the Earthrise picture right there in the middle that I got when I was in Houston, touring the Houston Space Center. And that is one of my biggest inspirations. Okay. All right. So here's the 4 questions I get asked most often when this topic comes up, and I intend to answer them before I take any of your other questions. First one, what is your speaking goal, or what is it that you want to accomplish? All right. For me, the original goal was that I needed to get those educational awards done for the clubs, and I had to do 21 speeches in 25 weeks to get that done. So it was all about getting those 21 speeches on the schedule and then getting them all written and being able to deliver them so that I could get the educational awards in. I will tell you, though, that I've now gotten kind of hooked on this approach, that I have already set my 22-23 goals, and I'll share them with you when we get all done to the end tonight. All right, but you need to have a goal. I will tell you this: if you're not setting a personal goal of delivering at least 1 to 2 educational awards for your club or clubs each year, you're shortchanging your own development because you're not speaking enough then. So I'm going to just put that out there. Love me, hate me, I don't care, whatever. Second question, what are your constant sources for speech topics? You know, how do you avoid, how do you really come up with a speech topic? For me, after 20 plus years in Toastmasters, there's always fallback topics. If I'm going to be presenting to club officers, it's something from the 4 fundamentals of club success. If it's district officers, it's going to be something about Smedley's legacy, club constitution, membership contracts, Toastmasters promise, something along those lines, because I don't think our officers hear that stuff enough. If it's a non-Toastmasters audience, I have my experiences to fall back on: tripling my salary when I joined Toastmasters, finding my career path, sustaining my place in the top of the talent pool at work, all for the price of a weekly cup of coffee. And I have a couple of subscriptions to news briefs. I particularly like Medium. They have a lot of interesting trends in their news briefs, so I saved those off. So that's one of the pools that I can go tap into. I also have my mom. Yep, 100 years old, she's still kicking, and she sacrificed a lot to get me through college. But Toastmasters and great mentors made me the professional that I am today. So I can always weave stories from mom to finding mentors, to finding Toastmasters, to, you know, getting on a career path. Those are always good stories that I can come up with. And then, like I said, when I see a blank page in front of me, I just start a conversation with myself and I see where it's going to take me. How to avoid the blank page? I never think of it as a blank page. It's just an opportunity to get started. And I've just described a lot of ways that I have to trigger a good start for myself. And the last question, is writing a speech the same as writing a contest speech? And let me be absolutely clear on this. No. Heck no. Absolutely not. No, not at all. Okay, are we clear? If I was writing a contest speech, it would be very different than writing a speech for a project to get educational credit. I think this is another mistake that we make. We're way too hard on ourselves. We expect too much from the project work. The project work is supposed to be a learning lab. We're supposed to be learning things from it. So push yourself, try something new that you've never tried before. What's the worst thing that could happen? Your evaluator is going to tell you that it needs some work. Okay. All my speeches need work. I don't give perfect speeches, so I'm not going to be surprised by that at all. In fact, I kind of like challenging the evaluators to see if they'll really be tough with me. because I think I need tough love. All right. So if I was writing a contest speech, it would be very different. It would have to be perfect. It would have to be perfectly written, perfectly timed, perfectly staged, perfectly delivered, because it's a contest speech and they are looking to deduct points. So the work would be a lot more diligent than it would be on doing project work for educational awards. All right. Those are the answers to the top 4 questions I usually get. What else do you want to hit me with? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So I'm going to wrap it up.
You said you were going to share your goals for next year. Did I miss that?
No, it's right here, Connie.
Also,
Trish,
Cynthia,
Where?
I had a question in regards to mentoring new members who come on board. Do you tend to listen to what their preparation style is and then help them develop their own planning sequence to where they're not frightened? Or do you give them a small box and say, make it a bigger box and a better box?
It's part of the reason I was uncomfortable about this, doing this presentation in the first place. I'm not here telling anybody how to prepare their speeches. And I would never want to put that kind of box around a brand new member. When I'm talking to a new member during the onboarding process about their icebreaker, I say as little as possible, other than have a good time. You know, share something about yourself that you're comfortable sharing, that lets us get to know you a little bit better in any style that you feel comfortable with. And remember, it's only a speech. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just need to get through it. And that's about it when I am coaching someone on their icebreaker speech. I watch speakers, and for a club like Showtime, I have a feeling from the way you all give speeches and the level of evaluation that we have to give you back, of how much preparation you do or how you prepare to give your speech. But we could talk about that for hours down at the bar. Not today. All right. You can see my 22-23 goals. And I started this one with 11 months still in the term when I put this one in writing. 22 speeches for 10 educational awards by June 30th of 2023. I have 11 months to get it done. I've already completed 2 of the 10 educational awards. So figure out how many speeches I have left. I don't know. I just know that I am at a comfortable pace of about 2 speeches per month, which is what I was trying to get to. Okay. All right, that's my part.
All right.
There you are. I've missed seeing everybody.
All right. Thanks very much, Trish. We appreciated it. And thank you for giving in to all of us begging you for, how did you do that again? So, it seemed like a good idea at the time. All right. I do want to thank everyone for being here on behalf of Showtime. We're glad that you attended tonight, and of course also for supporting the work that Showtime Toastmasters does in sharing and educating on various topics through these workshops. And we also want to make sure that you remember that we have another Power Hour coming up next month. It's on November 21st. It's at 6:30 Arizona time. You're all here. You know what time that is. And the title is going to be 50 plus ways to turn off your audience.
I love that.
I can think of at least 5 that I just am stellar at. So we will look forward to seeing what Bobby has to tell us next month. Thank you all so much for being here. And of course, be safe for the rest of the week. And we will see you later.
Bye. Bye.